The great hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with voices from 100 different worlds. Ambassador Kethvar stood at the center podium, his blue skin gleaming under the bright lights. Around him sat representatives from every corner of the galaxy. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few looked like walking trees. But they all shared one thing: they had never seen a real human. The ancient texts are nothing more than stories, Kethvar said, his voice echoing through the chamber. These so-called war gods were just myths created to explain battles we cannot understand today. Several council members nodded in agreement. The Altarian delegate, Zenthara, raised one of her forearms. But what about the weapon signatures, found on dead worlds? The blast patterns that match no known technology? Kethvar waved his hand dismissively. Old equipment malfunctions. Space pirates with stolen weapons. There are many explanations that do not require believing in fairy tales. 3,000 light-years away, Dr. Elena Martinez floated in the empty corridor of a derelict space station. Her suit's headlamp cut through the darkness as she examined the walls. To everyone else, she was just another Terran archaeologist. The galaxy had many human-like species, and most aliens could not tell them apart. It was the perfect disguise for someone who needed to stay hidden. Elena had spent 5 years searching through old battlefields and abandoned stations. She collected fragments of metal, scraps of data, and pieces of equipment that others ignored. What she found told a different story than the one the galaxy believed. She pressed her scanner against a section of wall that looked different from the rest. The metal was harder, the design more efficient. Her scanner beeped, and data flowed across her visor display. The metal contained elements that were rare in this part of the galaxy but common near Earth. Another human ship, she whispered to herself. The station had been a military outpost once. Elena could see the gun positions, the blast doors, and the command centers, but more importantly, she could see the style. Humans built things in a certain way, practical, tough, and designed to keep working even when everything went wrong. Found what she was looking for in the central computer core. Most of the data had been wiped clean, but Elena knew where to look. Human computers always kept backup files in hidden partitions. It took her 3 hours to crack the security, but finally the screen lit up with text. Personal log, Captain. Sarah Williams, Earth Defense Force Vessel Titan, Stardate 2847.3. We have received orders to withdraw from all galactic operations. The war is over and the Void Swarm has been defeated. Command says it is time to go home and let the galaxy heal without us. Elena's hands shook as she read. Here was proof that humans had not just existed, but had been major players in galactic history. The timestamp put this log at nearly 3,000 years ago, right around the time the Void Swarm had mysteriously disappeared from historical records. She scrolled through more files. Ship manifests, battle reports, casualty lists. The numbers were staggering. Earth had committed over 2 million soldiers and 3,000 ships to the war against the Void Swarm. The casualties had been enormous, but they had won. Why did we leave? Elena asked the empty station. Why did we let them forget us? Meanwhile, Captain Jake Sullivan sat in the command chair of his ship, watching stars drift past on the main screen. The Wanderer was not a warship. It was an exploration vessel, small and fast. His crew of 4 spent their time mapping star systems and cataloging planets that might be useful someday. Captain, said Lisa Thompson from the pilot's seat, I'm picking up something strange on the long-range sensors. Jake leaned forward. What kind of strange? Multiple distress signals, all from Council worlds in the Kepler sector. They're all saying the same thing. Massive attack, unknown enemy, requesting immediate assistance. Danny Rodriguez looked up from his engineering station. That's 12 different worlds, Captain, all hit within the last 6 hours. Amy Clark turned from her communications console. Sir, I'm monitoring Council emergency channels. They're not taking these reports seriously. Command is calling them false alarms and equipment failures. Jake frowned. The Council had enjoyed 3,000 years of peace. They had grown comfortable, maybe too comfortable. Their military was more for show than for fighting, and they had forgotten what real war looked like. Set course for the nearest attacked world, Jake ordered. We need to see what's really happening out there. That would Be Kepler 442b, Lisa said. A mining colony with about 50,000 inhabitants. Any response from the colony itself? Amy shook her head. Nothing for the last 2 hours. Just automated distress beacons. The Wanderer jumped to hyperspace, leaving the safety of the outer rim behind. As they traveled, Jake could not shake the feeling that something terrible was happening. The galaxy had been peaceful for so long that most species had forgotten how to fight real wars. They had police forces and patrol ships, but nothing designed for serious combat. Back in the council chambers, Senthara stood to address the assembly. I have studied the ancient texts for most of my life. The descriptions of human warriors are too detailed to be pure fiction. They speak of soldiers who fought for days without rest, of ships that could take damage that would destroy any other vessel, of tactics that seemed to come from nowhere but always worked. Stories grow in the telling, Kethavar replied. Perhaps there was once a species called humans, but they are gone now. We are the guardians of the galaxy, and we have kept peace for 3 millennia. Peace, Senthara repeated slowly. Yes, we have had peace. But what happens when something comes that wants war? Her words hung in the air like a challenge. Most of the council members looked uncomfortable. They had built their entire civilization around the idea that negotiation and diplomacy could solve any problem. The thought that some enemies might not want to talk was something they refused to consider. Elena Martinez packed her findings carefully and prepared to leave the dead station. She had enough evidence now to prove that humans had once been a major force in the galaxy. But she also had something else, coordinates. The backup files contained references to other human installations, other ships, other bases. Most importantly, they contained navigation data that pointed toward a system listed only as home base. She had found the trail that could lead her back to Earth. As her small ship powered up and began its journey toward the galactic core, Elena did not know that she was already too late. The distress signals Jake Sullivan had detected were not false alarms. Something ancient and terrible had returned to the galaxy, something that remembered humans very well and had spent 3,000 years preparing for their return. The war god slept, but not for much longer. The Wanderer dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442b system. What Captain Jake Sullivan saw on his screens made his blood run cold. The mining colony was gone. In its place was a field of debris and twisted metal that stretched for thousands of kilometers. My God, whispered Lisa Thompson. What could do this? Danny Rodriguez ran his sensors over the wreckage. I'm reading massive heat signatures. Whatever hit this place used weapons that could melt rock. The planet's surface is still cooling. Amy Clark monitored emergency frequencies. No survivors, Captain. The automated beacons are the only thing still transmitting. Jake stared at the destruction. He had seen pirate attacks before, but this was different. Pirates took what they wanted and left. This looked like someone had tried to erase the colony from existence. Launch a probe, he ordered. We need samples of that debris. As the probe collected data, Jake's worst fears were confirmed. The weapon signatures were unlike anything in the current galactic database, but they were not completely unknown. His ship's computer contained historical files that most people had forgotten about. Files about an enemy that had once threatened to consume the entire galaxy. Captain, Danny said, his voice tight with fear. These readings match something. In our historical archives, the Void Swarm. Jake felt his heart skip a beat. Every human child learned about the Void Swarm in school. They were the reason humanity had retreated from galactic politics 3,000 years ago. After defeating them at terrible cost, Earth had decided that the galaxy needed time to heal without human interference. That's impossible, Lisa said. The Void Swarm was destroyed. The records are clear. The records say they disappeared, Jake corrected. There's a difference. Amy turned from her station. Captain, I'm picking up a transmission from Earth's Deep Space Monitoring Network. They want to speak with you directly. Priority Alpha. Jake had never received a Priority Alpha message before. It meant that Earth's government considered the situation a threat to human survival. He took the call in his private quarters, sealing the door behind him. Admiral Kate Johnson appeared on his screen. She looked older than Jake remembered, with gray hair and lines around her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. Behind her, he could see the war room beneath the Rocky Mountains that served as Earth's military command center. "Captain Sullivan," the Admiral said without preamble. "What's your current position?" "Kepler 442b system, Admiral. The colony has been destroyed. Completely." Admiral Johnson closed her eyes for a moment. "We've been monitoring deep space communications. 12 Council worlds have gone silent in the past 8 hours. All in the same way. The Void Swarm has returned," Jake said. "That's what our analysts believe. We've been tracking unusual energy signatures for months, but we hoped we were wrong." The Admiral paused. "Captain, I'm ordering you to return to Earth immediately. We need your sensor data, and we need to prepare for what's coming." Jake nodded. "Understood, Admiral. But what about the Council? Shouldn't we warn them?" "Dr. Elena Martinez is already trying. She's been working undercover for us, gathering evidence about humanity's role in the last war. But the Council won't listen. They think the attacks are equipment failures." As Jake's ship prepared to jump back to Earth, Elena Martinez sat in a holding cell on the Council's home world. Her true identity had been discovered when she tried to present her evidence to the emergency session. Instead of listening to her warnings, they had arrested her as a spy. The cell was small and cold, designed to hold criminals from a dozen different species. Elena paced back and forth, frustrated by the Council's blindness. She had shown them weapon signatures, energy readings, and historical data that proved the Void Swarm had returned. They refused to believe any of it. "The humans are extinct," Kethvar had said during her interrogation. "These records are forgeries designed to create panic." But not everyone on the Council was blind. Xanthara had visited Elena's cell twice, asking careful questions about human military capabilities. The old Altarian scholar seemed to understand that something terrible was happening. "How many humans are there?" Xanthara asked during her second visit. "About 8 billion on Earth," Elena replied. "Maybe another 2 billion spread across our colonies." "And they all know how to fight?" Elena shook her head. "Most are civilians, but every human studies military history in school. We remember the last war, even if the rest of the galaxy has forgotten." Xanthara was quiet for a long time. "In the old texts, it says that humans were reluctant warriors, that they preferred peace but were terrible in battle when forced to fight." "That's still true," Elena said. "We left the galaxy alone because we knew what we were capable of. We hoped that 3,000 years would be enough time for everyone to learn how to live together. It appears that time has run out." On Earth, President Ryan Cooper stood in the Situation Room surrounded by his military advisors. The walls displayed maps of the galaxy showing the spread of Void Swarm attacks. The pattern was clear. They were moving in a spiral toward the galactic core, destroying everything in their path. "How long before they reach Earth?" the president asked. General Robert Hayes pointed to the display. "At their current rate of expansion, 18 months. But that assumes they maintain their current speed and don't discover our location." "They'll discover us," said Dr. Nicole Turner from her position near the screens. "The Void Swarm isn't random, it's intelligent, and it remembers us. This isn't just an attack on the galaxy, it's revenge." President Cooper had hoped this day would never come. For 3,000 years, Earth had lived in secret, hidden behind advanced technology that kept them invisible to the rest of the galaxy. They had watched civilizations rise and fall, had seen the Council grow complacent and weak, but they had not interfered. "What are our options?" he asked. "We could run," suggested Colonel Lisa Wong. "Take our population and flee to another galaxy. The Void Swarm might not follow. And abandon 10 trillion innocent beings to death?" Commander Alex Turner stepped forward. "Sir, with respect, that's not who we are." The president looked at the young commander. Alex Turner represented the new generation of human military leaders, soldiers who had trained their entire lives for a war they hoped would never come. "What do you propose, Commander?" "We do what we've always done," Alex said simply. "We fight." "Doctor," Nicole Turner pulled up new data on her screens. I've been analyzing the attack patterns. The Void Swarm has evolved since the last war. They're faster, smarter, and more adaptable, but they're also more focused. In the old war, they consumed everything randomly. Now they're targeting specific systems, specific technologies. They're preparing for something, General Hayes realized. This isn't just expansion, it's preparation for a larger assault. President Cooper made his decision. Activate the defense protocols. Begin recalling our deep space assets. And send a message to Admiral Johnson. It's time to wake up the fleet. Deep beneath Earth's oceans and hidden in asteroid fields throughout the solar system, machines that had slept for 3 millennia began to stir. Shipyards that had been silent started their assembly lines. Weapons that had been stored in vacuum began their initialization sequences. Captain Jake Sullivan's ship emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system. What he saw took his breath away. The Wanderer's sensors detected over 1,000 ships of various sizes, all bearing the distinctive design of human military vessels. More were emerging from hidden bases every hour. "My God," Lisa whispered. "How long have they been preparing for this?" "Since the day we left," Jake replied. As the Wanderer approached Earth, Jake realized that humanity had never really stopped being warriors. They had simply been waiting, hoping for peace but preparing for war. The galaxy was about to remember why humans had once been called the war gods. The sleeping giants were waking up and they were not happy about being disturbed. President Ryan Cooper stood before the Global Assembly, looking out at representatives from every nation on Earth. The chamber was silent as he prepared to speak words that would change everything. 3,000 years ago, our ancestors made a choice, he began. They chose to withdraw from galactic affairs after defeating an enemy that threatened all life. They hoped the galaxy would learn to live in peace without us. That time of peace is over. The assembly erupted in voices from 100 different languages. Some delegates argued for continued isolation, others demanded action. Cooper raised his hand for silence. The Void Swarm has returned, and this time they are stronger. 18 council worlds have already fallen. In 6 months, they will reach the galactic core. In 18 months, they will find Earth. Admiral Kate Johnson activated the main display, showing the spread of Void Swarm attacks across the galaxy. The pattern was clear and terrifying. "We have 2 choices," Cooper continued. "We can run, or we can fight. If we run, 10 trillion innocent beings will die. If we fight, we might be able to save them." The vote was not close. Earth would go to war. Admiral Johnson received her orders within the hour. The Terran Defense Fleet, hidden and upgraded for 3 millennia, would reveal itself to the galaxy. She walked through the command center beneath the Pacific Ocean, watching as officers who had trained for this moment their entire lives prepared for actual combat. Captain Michelle Parks stood beside the massive viewing window of the UES Defiance. The flagship was 5 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Around it, hundreds of other ships prepared for departure from their lunar hiding places. "Admiral," Parks said, "the fleet is ready." Johnson nodded. "Signal. All ships, we launch in 1 hour." Meanwhile, Elena Martinez sat in her cell as alarms began sounding throughout the council station. Through her small window, she could see ships rushing to defensive positions. The Void Swarm had found the council's homeworld. Zenthara appeared at Elena's cell door, her 4 arms working to unlock the security systems. "Your people," she said urgently. "Are they really coming?" "They're already here," Elena replied. The 2 women ran through corridors filled with panicking council members. Most had never seen real combat and had no idea how to respond to an attack. Their defense forces were designed for peacekeeping, not war. On the main viewing deck, Elena and Zenthara watched as Void Swarm ships emerged from hyperspace. The enemy vessels were dark and angular, covered in weapon systems that pulsed with deadly energy. They moved in perfect formation, like a swarm of mechanical insects. "How many?" Zenthara asked. Elena counted quickly. 200 ships, maybe. More, the Council fleet doesn't stand a chance. The Council's defense ships opened fire first, their weapons creating bright flashes against the darkness of space. But the Void Swarm vessels seemed to absorb the energy. their hulls adapting to each new attack. Within minutes, half the Council fleet was destroyed. Then something impossible happened. New ships appeared, dropping out of hyperspace behind the Void Swarm formation. These vessels were different, sleek and powerful, with weapon systems that glowed with blue-white energy. Humans, Elena whispered. The human fleet opened fire, and the difference was immediate. Their weapons cut through Void Swarm defenses like knives through paper. The enemy ships, so invulnerable moments before, began exploding in chains of fire. Captain Parks commanded the assault from the Defiance's bridge. "Target their command ship first," she ordered. "Take out their coordination network." The battle lasted only 20 minutes. When it was over, the Void Swarm force was completely destroyed, and the Council station was safe. But Elena knew this was just the beginning. Admiral Johnson's face appeared on every screen in the Council chambers. For the first time in 3,000 years, a human addressed the galactic government directly. "I am Admiral Kate Johnson of the Terran Defense Fleet," she said. "We have destroyed the Void Swarm force attacking your station, but this was only a scouting group. The main force is still coming." Kethvar stood up, his blue face pale with shock. "You are supposed to be extinct." "We chose to disappear," Johnson replied. "But we never stopped watching, and we never stopped preparing. The Void Swarm is a threat to all organic life. We can defeat them, but only if we work together." The Council chamber erupted in arguments. Some species demanded to know why humans had hidden for so long. Others questioned whether humanity could be trusted. A few wise voices, led by Zenthara, called for cooperation. Elena was brought before the Council to explain what she had discovered. In her research, she stood at the center of the Great Chamber, surrounded by representatives who had thought her people were myths. 3,000 years ago, humanity fought a war that cost us millions of lives, she said. We won, but the victory left us changed. We realized that our capacity for warfare frightened even ourselves, so we withdrew, hoping the galaxy would learn to live in peace. "And now you return as conquerors?" Kethvar demanded. "We return as protectors," Elena replied. "The same as we were before." Admiral Johnson transmitted tactical data to the Council's military leaders. The information showed Void Swarm positions throughout the galaxy and projected attack patterns for the next phase of their assault. "They will strike at 50 systems simultaneously," Johnson explained. "Industrial worlds, military, bases, and population centers. The goal is to cripple the galaxy's ability to resist before launching their final assault." General Robert Hayes appeared on the communication link. "We can protect maybe half of those systems with our current fleet. The rest will fall, unless the Council forces can adapt quickly to new tactics." "What do you need from us?" asked Admiral Vorthek of the Zephyrian fleet. "Everything," Hayes replied bluntly. "Ships, troops, supplies, and most importantly, trust. We know how to fight the Void Swarm, but we cannot do it alone." Commander Alex Turner led the first joint training exercise between human and alien forces. The session took place on a military station near the Galactic Rim, where damaged ships from both fleets could practice coordination. The alien crews were amazed by human tactics. Where they relied on overwhelming firepower or defensive formations, humans used speed, deception, and adaptability. Human ships moved in patterns that seemed random but always positioned them for maximum advantage. "Your captains think like predators," observed Fleet Commander Sildana of the Altarians. "We think like survivors," Turner corrected. "The Void Swarm adapts to everything we throw at them. The only way to win is to never fight the same battle twice." Dr. Nicole Turner worked with alien scientists to understand how the Void Swarm had evolved. Her laboratory on Earth received samples from every destroyed world, and the results were disturbing. "They are not just machines anymore," she reported to the Joint Command Staff. "The Void Swarm has developed something like biological components. They can heal, adapt, and even learn from individual encounters. That explains why our old tactics are less effective," said Admiral Johnson. "They remember everything we did in the last war." Captain Jake Sullivan returned from a reconnaissance mission with even more troubling news. "I found 3 more dead systems," he reported. But the Void Swarm left something behind in each one. Construction sites. They are building something big. The Joint Intelligence Team analyzed Sullivan's data and reached a chilling conclusion. The Void Swarm was not just conquering the galaxy, they were preparing to transform it into something that could support only mechanical life. They want to eliminate organic life entirely, Elena realized. This is not just war, it is extinction. President Cooper made the final decision during an emergency session of the Global Assembly. We will commit the full strength of Earth's military to this fight. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon we have built over the past 3 millennia. So, order went out across human space. From hidden bases in asteroid fields to secret shipyards orbiting distant stars, the machinery of war began to move. Humanity was going to war again, and this time the entire galaxy would see what the war gods could do when they stopped holding back. The sleeping giants were fully awake now, and they were very, very angry. The attack came at dawn across 12 different star systems. Void Swarm forces struck simultaneously, their dark ships emerging from hyperspace like shadows given form. Within the first hour, 6 council worlds went silent. Admiral Kate Johnson stood in the command center watching the tactical displays. Red dots marked enemy positions while blue dots showed the combined human and alien fleets racing to intercept. There were not enough blue dots. Status report, she ordered. Colonel Lisa Wong pulled up the latest intelligence. Kepler 186 and Ross 128 have fallen completely. The defense fleets were overwhelmed in minutes. Proxima Centauri and Wolf 359 are holding, but barely. Our forces at Gliese 667 report the enemy is using new weapon systems. What kind of new weapons? Energy vampires, Wong replied grimly. They drain power from our ships and use it to strengthen their own hulls. The Zephyrian Third Fleet lost half their ships before they figured out how to counter it. Johnson cursed, under her breath. The Void Swarm was adapting faster than expected. Every battle taught them something new about galactic defense capabilities. Captain Michelle Parks commanded the defense of the industrial world, Tau Ceti IV. Her task force included the UES Defiance, 3 Altarian cruisers, and a mixed squadron of Council patrol ships. The enemy force approaching them was twice their size. All ships, this is Captain Parks, she transmitted. Remember your training. Hit fast, hit hard, and never stay in one place long enough for them to adapt. The Void Swarm vessels approached in perfect formation, their black hulls reflecting no light. Parks had fought these enemies before in simulations, but seeing them in person was different. They moved with purpose that felt almost alive. Enemy ships are charging weapons, reported her tactical officer. All ships, attack pattern Delta 7, break their formation. The human ships moved first, their engines creating trails of blue fire as they accelerated to combat speed. The alien vessels followed, trying to match human maneuvers that seemed to defy physics. The battle was brutal. Void Swarm weapons tore through shields like they were made of paper, but human tactics proved superior. Instead of meeting the enemy head-on, Parks divided her force into 3 groups that attacked from different angles. They are trying to adapt to our weapons, called out Commander Sildana from her Altarian cruiser. Their hulls are changing composition. Then we change weapons, Parks replied. She switched her ship's primary guns from energy beams to kinetic projectiles. The solid metal rounds punched through Void Swarm armor before the enemy could adapt. The other ships followed her lead. Soon the space around Tau Ceti IV was filled with different types of weapons fire, as each ship used whatever the enemy had not yet adapted to counter. On the ground, Commander Alex Turner led the first joint military operation between human and alien forces. His target was a Void Swarm construction site on the dead world of Kepler 442c. Intelligence suggested the enemy was building some kind of superweapon. Turner's team included 50 human soldiers and an equal number of volunteers from 6 different species. They had trained together for only 2 weeks, but it would have to be enough. Remember, Turner briefed his mixed force. The Void Swarm uses mechanical infantry that can adapt to our tactics in real time. Never use the same approach twice. Keep moving, keep changing, and watch each other's backs. The landing was rough. Void Swarm air defenses filled the sky with deadly energy bolts that could slice through the heaviest armor. Half the transport ships were destroyed before they reached the surface. Turner hit the ground running, his rifle already firing at the mechanical soldiers that swarmed toward them. Beside him, a Zephyrian warrior used 4 arms to operate 2 weapons simultaneously, while an Altarian engineer provided covering fire with a weapon that shot crystallized sound. "The construction site is 2 kilometers north," Turner shouted over the noise of battle. "We move fast and we move together." The team fought through 3 lines of Void Swarm defenses. The enemy soldiers were tireless and felt no fear, but they lacked the creativity that organic minds brought to combat. When they adapted to one tactic, the joint force simply switched to another. At the construction site, Turner saw what the enemy was building and felt his blood turn cold. It was a massive device that seemed to bend space around itself. Energy readings suggested it could destroy an entire star system with a single shot. "We need to call in an orbital strike," said Sergeant Pete Wilson, Turner's demolitions expert. "Negative," Turner replied. "That thing has shields that could stop a battleship's main guns. We do this the hard way." Dr. Nicole Turner worked frantically in her laboratory aboard the UES Defiance. The samples her brother had sent from the construction site revealed the true horror of what the Void Swarm was planning. "It is not just a weapon," she reported to Admiral Johnson. "It is a conversion device. It can transform matter at the molecular level, turning organic worlds into mechanical ones." Johnson felt sick. "How many of these devices are they building?" "Unknown, but if they complete even one, they could start a chain reaction that transforms the entire galaxy." The Admiral made a difficult decision. "Signal all fleets. We are changing our strategy. Defense is no longer enough. We attack their main force directly." Captain Jake Sullivan piloted a reconnaissance mission deep into Void Swarm territory. His orders were to locate the enemy's primary command center and gather intelligence about their ultimate plans. What he found was worse than anyone had imagined. The Void Swarm had constructed a massive space station at the galaxy's core, bigger than most moons. It pulsed with dark energy and seemed to be drawing power from the black hole at the galaxy's center. "Captain," Amy Clark called from her station, "I am detecting massive fleet movements. They have over 10,000 ships gathered around that station." Sullivan transmitted the data back to Earth. The numbers were staggering. Even with all human and council forces combined, they would be outnumbered 5-1. General Robert Hayes received Sullivan's report and immediately called an emergency meeting of the Joint Command Staff. Representatives from every species sat around the holographic display showing the enemy superstation. "It gets worse," Hayes said grimly. "Our scientists believe that station is not just a command center. It is designed to broadcast the conversion signal across the entire galaxy simultaneously." "How long before it is operational?" asked Admiral Vorthek. Dr. Nicole Turner answered from her remote connection. "Based on the energy patterns, maybe 6 weeks. After that, every organic world in the galaxy will start transforming into mechanical replicas." The room fell silent. Finally, Elena Martinez spoke up from her position as Earth's new ambassador to the Council. "There is only one option," she said quietly. "We attack the station directly, all of us with everything we have." "That would be suicide," protested several alien commanders. Commander Turner stepped forward. "Maybe. But if we do nothing, it is genocide. At least this way we go down fighting." Admiral Johnson made the announcement to the combined fleets. "All ships will converge on the galactic core in 72 hours. This is not a rescue mission or a defensive action. This is a direct assault on the enemy's most heavily defended position. Many of us will not return." She paused, looking around, at the faces of humans and aliens who would soon fight together in the greatest battle in galactic history. "But if we succeed, we save every living thing in the galaxy. And if we fail, we will make sure the galaxy remembers that, when extinction came calling, we stood up and said no." Across human space, the final preparations began. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier that Earth had hidden for 3,000 years prepared for the battle that would determine whether organic life would survive in the galaxy. The war gods were going to war one final time, and this time, they were not holding anything back. The largest fleet in galactic history emerged from hyperspace at the galaxy's core. Over 3,000 ships bearing the flags of 50 different worlds faced the massive Void Swarm station that hung like a mechanical spider near the central black hole. Admiral Kate Johnson stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance watching as enemy ships moved to intercept them. The Void Swarm fleet was enormous, but the combined forces of humanity and the Council had brought everything they had. All ships. This is Admiral Johnson, she broadcast to the fleet. Today we fight not for territory or resources, but for the right of organic life to exist in this galaxy. Remember your training, trust your allies, and never give up. Captain Michelle Parks commanded the first wave of attackers. Her squadron included human destroyers, Zephyrian battlecruisers, and Altarian carriers. They moved in perfect formation, despite having trained together for only a few weeks. The battle began with a storm of weapons fire that lit up space like a second sun. Void Swarm ships responded with their adapted defenses, but the combined fleet had learned from previous encounters. Every ship used different weapon types, forcing the enemy to constantly readjust their defenses. Enemy command ship bearing 27 Mark IV, reported Parks' tactical officer. It's coordinating their entire defense network. Parks smiled. Grimly. Then we take it out. All ships target the command vessel, full assault. Meanwhile, Commander Alex Turner led the most dangerous mission of the war. His strike team had to reach the station's core and plant Dr. Nicole Turner's virus directly into the main computer system. The virus was designed to disrupt the Void Swarm's collective consciousness, but it had to be uploaded from inside their central processing unit. Turner's team included volunteers from every species in the Alliance. They fought through the station's corridors against mechanical defenders that adapted to every tactic. But organic creativity proved superior to programmed responses. The core is just ahead, called Lieutenant Karen Foster, checking her scanner. But the defenses are getting thicker. Turner looked at his remaining soldiers. They had started with 200. Now only 50 remained. We knew this was a one-way trip, he said quietly. Let's make it count. Dr. Elena Martinez worked frantically in the UES Defiance's computer center. Her job was to analyze the station's broadcasts and find a way to disrupt the conversion signal before it could spread across the galaxy. The signal is almost ready, she reported to Admiral Johnson. If they activate it now, the transformation will begin on every organic world within 6 hours. How much time do we need? At least 30 minutes for the virus to take effect. Maybe longer. Johnson looked at the tactical display. The fleet was taking heavy casualties, but they were holding their ground. We'll buy you the time. Just get that virus uploaded. Captain Jake Sullivan piloted his ship through the chaos of the main battle. His mission was to provide cover for the strike teams trying to reach the station. Around him, ships from a dozen different worlds fought with desperate courage against an enemy that seemed endless. Captain, Amy Clark called out, I'm detecting a massive energy buildup from the station's core. They're preparing to fire the conversion signal. Sullivan felt his heart sink. If the signal activated before Turner's team could upload the virus, the war would be over. Every organic world in the galaxy would begin transforming into mechanical copies. All ships, he broadcast. The station is preparing to fire. We need to disrupt their power systems now. The combined fleet focused all their firepower on the station's energy collectors. Massive explosions rippled across the structure's surface, but the device continued charging. Inside the station, Turner's team reached the central core. The chamber was enormous, filled with processing units that hummed with dark energy. At the center stood a pillar of crystallized data that contained the Void Swarm's collective intelligence. There, said Dr. Nicole Turner over the communication link, that's where you need to upload the virus, but the security systems around it are unlike anything we've seen. Turner looked at the pillar. It was surrounded by energy fields and mechanical guardians that moved like liquid metal. Getting close enough to upload the virus would require someone to sacrifice themselves. I'll do it, said Sergeant Pete Wilson, Turner's demolitions expert. I can clear a path with my remaining explosives. No, Turner replied. This is my responsibility. He handed the virus drive to Wilson. Get this uploaded when I give you the signal, no matter what happens to me. Turner charged toward the pillar, his weapons blazing. The mechanical guardians converged on him, their forms shifting to counter his attacks. But his sacrifice gave Wilson the opening he needed. The demolitions expert sprinted toward the pillar and jammed the virus drive into the main data port. Immediately, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Upload complete, Wilson reported. The virus is spreading through their network. In space, the effects were immediate. Void swarm ships began moving erratically as their coordination network broke down. Some stopped fighting entirely, while others turned on each other. Admiral Johnson saw the opportunity and pressed the attack. All ships full assault. They're confused and vulnerable. This is our chance. The battle turned quickly. Without their collective intelligence, the Void swarm forces could not coordinate their defenses. One by one, their ships were destroyed or disabled, but the victory came at a terrible cost. Over half the human fleet was destroyed, including many of Earth's most advanced warships. Thousands of the galaxy's finest soldiers had given their lives to save organic civilization. Captain Parks limped back to Earth aboard a damaged destroyer, one of the few survivors from her squadron. The sight that greeted her was both beautiful and heartbreaking. Earth's orbital shipyards were already working to rebuild the fleet, but the empty spaces where great ships had once docked told the story of the war's price. President Ryan Cooper addressed the galaxy from the council chambers on Nexus Prime. For the first time in 3,000 years, a human leader spoke to all the civilized worlds. The Void Swarm has been defeated, he announced, but this victory belongs to all of us. Humans, Zephyrians, Altarians, and 50 other species fought together to preserve organic life in our galaxy. He paused, looking around at the assembled representatives. 3,000 years ago, humanity withdrew from galactic affairs because we feared what we might become. Today, we learned that our greatest strength comes not from fighting alone, but from fighting together. Dr. Elena Martinez was appointed as Earth's permanent ambassador to the Reformed Galactic Council. Her first act was to establish joint training programs between human and alien military forces. Never again would the galaxy be caught unprepared for such a threat. Commander Alex Turner had survived the mission to the station's core, though he bore scars that would never fully heal. He was given command of the new Galactic Defense Force, a joint military organization designed to protect all member worlds. On a quiet evening, Turner stood on the observation deck of the new space station that replaced the destroyed Void Swarm facility. Earth's sun was visible in the distance, a small blue star among millions of others. Elena Martinez joined him at the viewing window. "Do you think we made the right choice?" she asked. "Coming out of hiding, I mean." Turner was quiet for a long moment. "My sister once told me that the universe doesn't care about our plans. It only cares about what we do when everything goes wrong." He pointed to the stars around them. "We had a choice when the galaxy was threatened. We could have stayed hidden and safe, or we could have stood up and fought for something bigger than ourselves. And now?" Turner smiled. "Now the galaxy knows that legends sometimes come true when they're needed most, and maybe that's enough." War was over, but the peace that followed was different from the one that had come before. It was a peace earned through sacrifice, protected by those who understood its true cost. The war gods had returned not as conquerors, but as guardians. And across the galaxy, parents would tell their children stories about the humans who had once been legends, and how those legends had returned to save them all when darkness threatened, to consume everything they loved. The sleeping giants slept again, but this time the galaxy slept safely beside them.